We are less than 48 hours from the NFL draft, and Underdog Fantasy just announced that Best Ball Mania 4 is going to have over $15 million in prizes. And there's no better time than now to start a brand new DFS and Best Ball podcast. Welcome to The Climb. BJ, how's it going?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing well. This is something we've been talking about doing for on and off for a couple of years now, and we finally, over the last week or so, decided to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, I'll say it was a long time coming, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'll put up the graphic here that's got all the info, the socials for the show. So hopefully we'll get a following, but if not, we'll just keep talking football to ourselves, and that'll be all right.
What we've been doing for the last couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things we'll be talking a lot about is Best Ball on Underdog. They just announced $3 million to first in Best Ball Mania. So I do have my promo code on here. It'll be on the slides in the bottom right. If you're a first-time player on Underdog, you can get a deposit match up to $100 with that code. So
do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've also got a video that I'll have a link to the description in this video, but it's breaking down my team that won $100,000 on Underdog last year. So a lot of good tidbits in there, particularly if you're brand new to Best Ball. So,
yes, sir. I'll say clearly better than me.
Yeah. No, you're just getting started. You're new to the Best Ball streets.
We're making it work, though. It'll be fun. So.
But yeah, kind of our plan for this episode was kind of recapping all the offseason movement and an early look at some areas that we're going to target for the early stages of Best Ball Mania 4 here when it opens, presumably next week. So we'll start with the AFC tonight and probably be doing another episode tomorrow with the NFC. So.
Yep. Excited. I'll say got a lot to talk about with the AFC. A lot of news, a lot of new things coming around, especially in recent days.
Yeah, and I figured what better conference or division, to start with than the AFC East, where the headline news has been over the last day or so.
Yeah, so I guess we can just kind of jump into the Jets and just to get that out of the way since they're all the news, and we'll go from there. Aaron Rodgers obviously got traded, and now the hype surrounding pretty much every receiver, mainly Garrett Wilson, is through the roof. I don't know how you personally feel about that, but as a whole, Aaron Rodgers kind of worries me. He's kind of always been like his guys, and with Lazard still hanging out there, I just don't know if Garrett Wilson is going to pay off on the draft capital as of right now.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case, and the most recent ADP from Underdog is Superflex ADP, so it's not necessarily easy to look at like overall ADP, but Garrett Wilson was going as wide receiver 9 in that, ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, and just behind CeeDee Lamb and Devontae Adams. So that's a pretty steep price. And
yeah, it's almost it's reasonable. The upside is there to be realistically the one, like, overall on the year.
Yeah, no, that was my thought as well. Like, I was thinking through it the other day, how many guys do we think have a realistic shot to be wide receiver 1? Because at this point, like, obviously Jefferson and Chase are in a tier of their own. I think you can make a case that Tyreek Hill could do it if both he and Tua are healthy for a whole season.
I would say Diggs as well.
Yeah, I think
Kupp.
But you got the questions about Stafford.
Yeah.
Diggs is probably the last guy that you can make a real case for, because like beyond that, you can start to poke holes.
Sure.
Devontae Adams will be a volume guy, but like Jimmy Garoppolo's ADOT is so much lower than what he's been dealing with. So like it starts to get thin, and I think you can, like, it would not surprise me if we look up and Wilson is the wide receiver 1. I just don't know if his chance is that much higher than a guy like Chris Olave, who had similar efficiency numbers as a rookie.
And got a quarterback upgrade. I mean, they both did, barring Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers are definitely different people. But
and when you start to think about like what you said, where like Rodgers targets his friends, he brought Lazard along, and historically he's always played really slow.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to a team with a good defense. Like there's some avenues to failure here for Garrett Wilson at this price.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity for low scoring games, especially because the defense is so effective as a whole. They could be running the ball a lot more, burning the clock. And I mean, Rodgers, we saw it a whole bunch last year, dumped off to Aaron Jones quite a bit. Rodgers has kind of taken that Brady role as being the guy who dumps it off the most, I guess, going forward. I can't really think of anybody else off the top of my head that'll be doing that. But, that kind of leads into Breece Hall being hyper efficient in my mind. I think Breece Hall is probably one of I'm not sure what his ADP is right now, but I definitely can see Breece Hall being, once again, also having that upside of definitely top 5 running back on the year, if not, top 3.
Yeah, and I think he was well on his way to being a top 5 running back last year if he didn't get hurt. He's going RB8 right now, right behind Nick Chubb. He's also behind Kenneth Walker, Saquon Barkley. Like those, I think I'd be taking Breece over both of those. Not to go too far off the rails, but like,
yeah,
I'm worried about Ken Walker and Seattle. Like they have enough draft capital that they could add a running back and it not, crunch.
Just be a little more time split. Yeah, I think as long as, like you said, the Jets don't do anything crazy and add anybody in the backfield. I mean, we saw Bam Knight last year perform at times, but then, he was still nothing special after a little bit. He was, pretty much like just a guy, getting the touches. But yeah, Breece Hall really could have a whole lot of upside. And I would definitely take him before Chubb. Ken Walker's up in the air. Like you said, you'd have to see what they do in the draft. But I would have them back-to-back right now, and it would be close, in my opinion, on who I would rather have.
Yeah.
What do you think about Rodgers as a whole for something like best ball?
I think I'll probably have more of him than I did last year. I did not have much, and his scoring last year was just extremely flat. I mean, he was consistently getting like 15 to 18 points a week, but it really didn't translate to a good advance rate. So, like, I think it's the case of upside versus safety, and I don't know how much upside he offers, especially when he's moving to a team with a good defense. So
yeah, I agree.
He's just hard to fade when he's won MVP 2 of the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to completely fade.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's always the, argument. He'll be above, he could be above. I think his betting line on FanDuel is like 4,000 yards or something right now. I feel like, that's still kind of a low number for him. So, I would personally, like I said, take the over on that. But like I said, we don't know how, because Green Bay's never really had like a dominant defense like the Jets currently do. Well, at least that I can remember while he's been there. So it'll be interesting to see. I threw down my $10 on him to win the Super Bowl about 3 months ago now. So when all the trade rumors started talking up.
That was one thing I was going to mention too. I'm glad you brought that up is, I put these graphics together a couple days ago and I went back to check the odds after the trade and there was almost no movement. So and that's not really surprising, but from Vegas's perspective, this trade was already baked in. So I'm curious to see like if Garrett Wilson moves up at all, or if like the market was already totally convinced that this trade was happening. Because honestly, if Garrett Wilson gets much more expensive, he's going to be hard to stomach at that cost.
Yeah, I'll say, like I said, obviously there's a lot of upside in that, but I don't know. Like I said, it's hard for me just knowing, seeing Rodgers over the years, just throwing to his guys. He's still requesting, 40-year-old Mercedes Lewis to come with him. Like that's kind of a scary thought that he's trying to stick that out at this point in his career, both their careers. And it's, I don't know,
and last I checked, Randall Cobb is still a free agent too. So
it's a matter of time. Corey Davis will get cut, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, gotta make room for Randall. Just for some context, his ADP, quarterback 14 in between Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff, and a little surprised Geno Smith is going below him after the year that the Seahawks had last year. But I don't know. I guess like QB 14 is a tolerable price for Rodgers to me.
Yeah, so I figured Goff would actually be going a little bit higher than him, but that's another talk for another day.
Yep.
So,
real quick, any other quick thoughts on the Jets receivers? Obviously, they added Lazard and Mecole Hardman, traded away Elijah Moore. So there's some available targets there. But
yeah. I don't say. I mean, Hardman, dart throw. I mean, he might be good for best ball at times, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot. Tight ends are always a toss-up if you're not going after some of the big-name guys. So do what you wish with that.
They both just feel like stack partners to me. Like,
yeah,
if they fit a game stack or a Rodgers stack, I'm fine tacking them on, but I'm not going to be chasing Lazard.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, we'll see. I'll say Jets are probably going to be one of the more interesting teams to watch this year because of that.
Yeah. All right, so that was we're kind of going to go division by division with one big thing, and obviously the Rodgers news was the one big thing out of the East, but we'll kind of do a quick hitter, maybe not as deep of a dive on each of the other teams, but I don't know if you want me to start off with the Bills or if you got a hot take on the Bills off season.
No, I'll say nothing in particular. Only thing is about D-Hop potentially getting traded there, but I mean, who knows? I mean, otherwise, you pretty much know what you're getting with that team.
Yeah, it feels like Gabe Davis has proven that he's not a high-level target earner. Like, he's always going to be the high ADOT splash play guy, but, he's only going to hit 3 or 4 times over the course of the year. I think Deontay Hardy is somewhat interesting as like a late flyer if they don't add anybody else. But as you mentioned, like D-Hop is a possibility. I've seen them linked to Josh Downs as a potential rookie draft pick. So it's hard to get too excited about any of the ancillary wide receivers until we see how the draft market settles.
No, I agree. As far as drafting players individually off this depth chart, Josh Allen, once again, you know what you're getting with him. Same thing with Diggs. Knox is kind of on that borderline of he's a little more consistent in his points, but he never really has those boom games that you need for something like best ball. Once again, I think it would be another thing for a stack that if it comes around and it's right, he drops a little bit. It's probably going to get drafted a little bit higher than when there's better opportunities for, upside and other players at that point in the draft would be my guess.
I think one of the guys that I've had the hardest time with thinking through with Buffalo is James Cook, because he's got the receiving profile that we want out of a running back, but he's on a team that, Damian Harris is probably going to be the 1A back.
Right.
He's shown he can be a goal line back, and then you have the potential of Josh Allen goal line touches. And it's just like, where's the upside coming from for James Cook? Like, yeah, he's young, he's a receiver, but I'm just having a hard time getting behind him.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, just Buffalo running backs ever since Josh Allen's been there, it's been hard. I know Singletary, I think it was 2 years ago, he kind of had the tail end of games where he, pretty much won some overall championships. So like I said, I guess there is potential in these running backs to, have those high scoring games, but I mean, we just seen it time and time again where it's Josh Allen getting, majority of the rushing points, I guess, is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, moving on to Miami. You got anything big here? It was kind of a quiet offseason for them.
Yeah, I want to say the biggest thing I think that came out of them was Tyreek retiring in 3 years, but I mean that's minimal.
Yeah,
I know.
I threw in like the rookie question mark here at running back because they've been linked to Gibbs and they've been linked to Devon Achane, but I threw in a figure here at the end specifically for Miami, just showing the draft capital that they have. I mean, it is significantly below everyone else.
Yikes.
I think it's 4 picks total, and they have pick 51, pick 84, and then pick 197.
Yeah, losing that first hurt them quite a bit.
Yeah, so I keep seeing all the rumors about them adding a running back, and like I'm having a hard time buying it.
Yeah, honestly, they got problems elsewhere. As a whole, they got their 2 big receivers that they're going to carry that workload, and they added a few guys, but I mean, none of these guys are exciting in my opinion. And who even knows if Tua's going to be healthy to play and all that kind of stuff, because they had that rumor floating around about retirement with him recently. But I mean, if Tua plays, I love Tua for best ball. Like,
yeah, they're like
on
the
matchup.
perfect offense that you want. It's pass heavy and consolidated. Like that's the dream right there. So I'm definitely in on the Dolphins. I just think it can be kind of hard to get exposure to them because if you're not getting Tyreek or Waddle with Tua, like I don't want any of these other wide receivers, even as a flyer. Like they're just too concentrated.
No, well, it was like Trent Sherfield last year. He had I think like 2 or 3 big games, and I mean it's going to be the same thing. When one of those guys hurt, you're going to have somebody step in and potentially catch 2 or 3 bombs and for a game, and that might be it. Like you said, I don't think it's even worth. I would rather go with some rookie upside, probably at that point, that could work its way into the lineup and having a more prevalent role in the team. I can't see the path for anybody not Tyreek or Waddle to get the brunt of the work.
Yeah.
What about Smythe? How do you feel about him? I don't say I don't know anything about him, but I've seen.
No, I have a hard time believing they go into the season with him as their guy. I mean, it's a good rookie tight end class, but as we mentioned, like they just don't have the capital. So I'll be watching them pretty closely in the draft to see like maybe they swing a couple trade downs to get a couple more picks because it feels like running back and tight end are some big needs for them.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. It's if you go Wilson or Mostert, you're kind of just picking your poison because that's what it was last year. You have one guy who, probably got you about 14 points in a game, would have your good game, and the other guy got you about 30. Yeah, and so it's kind of the same thing. You're just flipping a coin on that, and it's not necessarily going to produce huge best ball numbers that you need for the longevity of the season.
Yeah, I'm gonna look real quick just out of curiosity to see like what their positional ADP was.
I imagine it's got to be on the lower end, especially.
Yeah, Mostert was RB 46, Wilson's RB 48.
Right next to each other.
Some other guys in that range. The Washington running backs are going ahead of them. Donta Foreman, Kenneth Gainwell, and then a couple of the like mid-round rookie running backs are in that range as well. So
I don't hate Foreman. Like I think that's way too low on him. But once again, different talk for a different day.
Honestly, I it's tough.
I would much rather have him than either of the Miami running backs. I see a path for actual scoring.
I think if Miami doesn't add anybody, that feels way too cheap for Mostert and Wilson. I think you push them up to. I mean, we're talking about low end RB4. right now. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
guess
saying
if
you're
you
going
look
to
at it
draft
that
him to
way,
be your RB2, but like you can tack him on as a third or fourth running back, and like that
yeah,
feels pretty good.
that I would agree with. I would I would like it more in like a redraft situation versus best ball, but I guess with this you don't have to worry about, starting them on the right week. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really just don't want anything to do with that, especially if they tag in some running back in the draft. Then I feel like it's just going to be a cluster of who knows what.
Yeah. And maybe that's why their ADP's down right now, because if you add in a Gibbs, like they're
Sure.
both dust.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that I don't say my my main take on this would be Tua and primary two wide receivers I'm all about. Otherwise, I really don't have any interest in touching anything.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I'll be curious to see if you feel the same way about New England that I do, and that's that all of this is gross, except for maybe Ramondre.
Yeah, I don't say I would draft multiple of the running backs from the fact of we know the Patriots love using multiple running backs, and it seems that their running backs always get hurt. Like relatively consistently. So just seeing, the possibility of somebody like James Robinson, who we've seen, put up crazy numbers in the past, like that would be, in my opinion, potentially, like some guy that could come around week 17, throw up 20, 30 points and win you some money.
I just have such a hard time getting behind James Robinson. He's just always one of those guys that I've been like slightly lower than the market on, so I've never had much of him. And I feel like my love for Ramondre is going to keep me from drafting a lot of James Robinson.
And that's fair. I mean, Ramondre is obviously going to be the guy for the most part. I would still expect him to get 15 to 20 touches a game pretty consistently. And I'd have him probably as a low end one, somewhere in that 2 range, just as a guess off the top of my head. With the potential to put up games, pretty big games. Because if you look at the receiving core here, there's nobody. First off, we don't even know who the quarterback is. Secondly, I really don't. I mean, Juju's been washed for a couple of years. Javonte Parker, Bourne. None of these guys did anything last year.
I think you just hit on the key thing, though, is like we don't even know that Mac Jones is going to start the whole year.
Right.
So, like, drafting him for best ball feels like a complete bust. Because if you show up in week 17, like with a Mac Jones on your roster and he's not even playing, like there goes all your Patriots stacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I want no part of it. And as you said, none of these weapons are appealing either. Like they add Mike Gesicki, so now the tight end role is split. Like, I guess if I'm drafting anybody from this team, it's probably going to be Tyquan Thornton because he's just going to be a super late flyer.
Yeah, and he's still young and has the upside. We haven't really seen him in full yet. That would be, I would agree on that. The quarterback situation kind of feels similar, and I mean, if it turns out this way again, that's kind of crazy. But what we had with Geno and Drew Lock going into last season, both of them have. Well, Zappy had a couple starts, but he wasn't anything, out of this world. But I think he won them a couple games. I think he might have won them 2 games, something like that. I don't remember. But like, you got Geno, who's been around a while and it's been okay at times, and that's Mac Jones to a T. And then Drew Lock, who's Bailey Zappi, who, probably isn't the right choice, but
yeah.
You don't know what you got until you try it, I guess, a little bit more.
It just feels like there's been a steady drumbeat of like dissent between Mac Jones and the Patriots camp. Yeah. So like they've got a lot of work to do to smooth that over. I guess I didn't label it on here, but it's not out of the question that they take a wide receiver early in the draft, which I think just makes this situation even worse. Like, there isn't really anybody in this wide receiver class that's going to make me all of a sudden be back in on Mac Jones.
No, I'm sure. Well, I was going to say it's going to feel like the Chiefs wide receiver room. essentially, but with a way worse quarterback.
Yeah. And I pulled up the ADP. So just overall ADP, again, this is super flex. So probably a little bit off from where they'll be going in Best Ball Mania. But Juju's going at pick 137. Taekwon's going at pick 213.
Yeah, that sounds like a definite last round pick. Kind of.
Yeah.
That would be, and I don't say I don't hate it there, but you know, like I said, I don't.
I will have almost no Juju at that
promise
price.
You, I will not have any Juju.
Yeah.
Let's just talk on. I don't say we can go to the next division, but let's just hit this real quick. Go back one more.
Yeah.
Bills over under on win total. What do you think? We'll just hit that on every team, and we'll go to the next.
10.5. I'll go over.
I would say over too. Jets at 9.5. I'd say over.
Yeah, I could see them underwhelming expectations, but I'll go over.
Miami at 9.5. I would say under right now.
I'll go over, but I think I am worried about the Tua injury risk there. Like, I don't think I'd actually, if I was actually placing bets, I don't think I'd want to mess with that line.
I watched a lot of Tua after he came back, and it didn't look the same. And all that may be gone now, and he might be completely fine. I just didn't like the way he looked when he was playing, and I don't know, it just wasn't it for me. So that's why I say that. And Patriots at 7.5. I would probably, that's a tough one, but I probably would say they get 7.
Yeah, I think it throws me a little bit because I still haven't adjusted my brain to the fact that it's 17 games for these lines.
Right.
But yeah, I think I would take the under. I guess the only case that I think you could make for the Patriots to be a better offense than expected is the fact that they actually have a competent offensive coordinator now.
Yeah.
Like what they did last year was just complete malpractice.
Awful.
So that, if you want to make that argument for the upside there, I get it, but I will not be following suit.
No. All right, let's hit up the more exciting division here.
Yeah, if you can go first, or I've got my one big takeaway here.
Oh, go ahead. I'll say.
Yeah, mine is obviously the Lamar situation. Mm-hmm. That's the big headline, but I've been thinking through it, and I think I want to be targeting the Ravens, Lamar, right away when Best Ball Mania 4 opens. And just one thing I didn't do last year was really think about Best Ball from a whole summer portfolio perspective. Mm-hmm. I was kind of just focused on each individual, puppy contest or each draft room for ADP value. But I'm trying to think more about how these lines are going to change for ADP over the summer. And I just think that I'd rather take the shots on Lamar now with the risk that he doesn't play and that those stacks get lit on fire than wait until he shoots back up. And plus the longer this goes on, his ADP is going to go lower, but also the risk of him sitting out gets higher with each passing day. So,
right. Yeah. And I don't say you're probably not going to get Lamar at any cheaper right now than you will unless he declares that they're done. He's not playing the season. Trade's not happening. Realistically, yeah. I think worst case scenario, this is just my opinion, I think he plays on the franchise tag even if they don't get the deal done. I don't remember what the number is, but I think it's just north of 40 million or something like that for a franchise tag. So, I mean, he's going to get paid a pretty hefty amount just to play 1 year.
Yeah, so it's hard to pass up on that kind of money. And he is a huge discount right now. He's going as QB7, one spot ahead of Trevor Lawrence, but he's behind Herbert and Burrow, and then Justin Fields is going as QB4. And
that's wild.
If you knew that Lamar was playing 17 games, I think you're probably drafting him either in line with or ahead of Fields.
Yeah, I was gonna say definitely top 5, bare minimum top 5. Yeah. Think of all the players in the NFL that have the potential to put up 40 plus every single game. I would probably put Hurts, any of the running quarterbacks. We don't have to get in depth about it, but
It's basically it's the
Hurts, Fields, and Lamar.
Yeah,
Maybe Allen.
It's the running quarterbacks, Allen, Mahomes. That's it.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you can get him right now at 7, like I said, it's probably worth the risk because, I mean, think about that last year. If people took the shot on Geno, like they could have got Geno with the last pick, towards the end. I'm not sure exactly where he got drafted at, but towards the end, and you got a guy that was pretty good all year.
Yeah, I mean, I think when best ball started last May, like Geno was probably going undrafted because people thought Drew Lock was the starter.
Right. So, I mean, there's a whole lot that can happen. Like, I mean, take the chance on Lamar now if you're going to do it. And either of the wide receivers, being Bateman or OBJ, I mean, either of them are going to be fine. I would personally rather take the one that's just got the lower ADP right now. Because I really think it's probably going to be split relatively fair point-wise. I think Odell's not going to have that super, super big play anymore since his body basically tells him you probably shouldn't be playing football. But
yeah, I think part of why I'm like, okay, I want to get my Ravens now is because they are discounted and I don't really feel good about either of them. So I'd rather take the discount now than have to chase them up the board when Lamar comes back. And right now, Bateman is wide receiver 44, Odell wide receiver 47. So
I figured they'd be pretty close. I'll say they really didn't lose anybody. Like their wide receiver room, I guess technically got better with like OBJ and Aguilar. Not that Aguilar is going to light the world on fire by any means, but I mean, Lamar has more people to throw to than what he did last year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's probably not a great sign for what your wide receiver room used to be when the guys that walked are still sitting unsigned in free agency.
Yeah, right. I mean, so moving on, kind of receiver, but kind of not. Mark Andrews is obviously, one of the big 3, well, I guess 4 now, guys you would want to draft. Obviously, you're paying up to get Mark Andrews, but never would hurt to have a Lamar Andrews stack early while you can get it, like I said, for a discount versus, in 2-3 months, they're probably going to be going not too far away from each other in the draft. You would probably, depending where you're drafting, you could pick one and not even have the chance at the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I'm perfectly fine taking Andrews. My general approach tight end for best ball is like, I'm either getting one of the elite guys or I'm just waiting and taking the shotgun approach with 3 guys late. Yeah, so Andrews is definitely in my wheelhouse.
Fair enough. What about Dobbins? How do you feel about the running backs this year?
Honestly, I don't have a strong take. I know there's been some folks out there who know more about the medical side than me who say like year 2 coming off the ACL is usually better. So maybe we see Dobbins get back to form, but like I wasn't super impressed by what I saw last year, and we know he's not going to catch passes. So
yeah. I know, I can't remember who was saying it, but they basically said it looked like he had one good leg, like sitting there running, and he could tell, but you need 2 legs to run, and that's why you got all these guys that are clearly faster and just in better shape as your whole body. Catching him on, you couldn't break off the big runs, and when you got a guy that's not catching passes, you need him to break off runs like that, and you just couldn't do it.
And I forgot to mention too, with the upside case for Lamar, if he stays in Baltimore, is they hired Todd Monken, who has been able to run some pretty high profile passing offenses. So like you can make the upside case for these receivers and Lamar there, which I think hurts the running backs a little bit. But I'm always, I guess after last year, I'm a little bit more hesitant to jump to conclusions about like what play style and offense is going to have, just because like I was out on Miami last year because I thought they were going to be run heavy, and they were one of the most pass heavy offenses in the league. So
running quadruple options and everything. So Yeah, that's really all I got on the Ravens. Who knows? Once again, they're kind of a very much a question mark for most of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Now for the Bengals, I think they're a lot of it's still pretty obvious to me when we're looking at that. If you exclude the running back room, I mean, you know what you're getting with Joe Burrow. Same thing with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. These guys are going to light the world on fire at times and kind of disappear here and there too. I think Burrow is probably about one of the safest quarterbacks this year as a whole. I guess he's kind of on that borderline. I know we didn't say his name, but he could be one of those quarterbacks that puts up close to 40. It's just a lot harder for him to do it.
Yeah, he's a tough one for me. Like, he's not quite as expensive as the other guys, but in terms of guys who don't offer a lot of rushing upside, like, he's the most expensive one. So it makes me a little nervous, but he's just got such premium stack partners that I think you can get away with it.
Yeah, we saw last 2 years that he's kind of, performed in championship week. So I mean, barring, everything that happened last year, that's one thing. But, we've seen him when it comes to championship time and playoffs. He's literally lighting the world on fire and doing everything. I had a note in my phone 2 years ago saying Joe Burrow is the guy. Like, he gets it done. Like, and I kind of take that to heart, and I still haven't ever owned him. He's always been just a little too rich for my taste when, you got those people that I just like the safety of the rushing running backs. At the same cost, I rather reach a little bit on that, knowing that I'm going to get a floor of like 20 points versus, with the upside of 40 being a little more consistent than where, I think Burrow is probably going to sit closer to around 25 to 30 on his, good scale.
Yeah.
So,
and I think I was going to add a couple graphs here for getting into some of the position stuff. These are a couple weeks old at this point, but I think at least for the Bengals that they're still on brand. This is from Sam Hoppen at 4for4, basically showing the Vegas implied odds of each team drafting a certain player. And at least a couple weeks ago, the Bengals were the favorite for Jahmyr Gibbs, and they were up there for Michael Mayer as well. And then if you look at just the Bengals like positional odds, then Vegas has a 40% chance of them drafting a tight end with their first pick, which is like right near the end of the first round. So as far as teams adding offensive weapons, I think they're a pretty good bet that there's going to be somebody new coming in.
Well, they do love drafting their tight ends. They love their tight ends in Cincy.
Yeah.
So how would you feel? I mean, let's just say Bijan slips or they draft Gibbs. We're going to say Mixon's out of the picture. Where are you taking the risk? Like, what round do you think that you would take one of the rookies? I know there's a little bit of difference between the two.
Yeah, I think so. Shoot, if Bijan goes here and Gibbs is gone, I mean, I think you can make a case for like mid-first Bijan. I mean, he's that good.
That's crazy.
The offense is going to score points. And plus, running back is not that appealing this year at the top. Like, we have McCaffrey 1 year older, Jonathan Taylor coming off injury-riddled year with probably a rookie quarterback. Eckler has demanded a trade. Saquon might hold out.
Yeah.
And then you get into kind of the guys like the Breece Hall, Ken Walker. So, if Bijan goes here, I have no problem taking him mid-first.
And we've seen what Mixon can do. Like, Mixon gets close to, I don't even know, but, it seemed like he was getting 25 to 30 touches some games. And, we've seen him put up those kind of points. However, he's like incredibly inefficient. I'm like, for a while there, it seemed like he would have like 16 touches and like 30 yards or something. It was like really low numbers like that. So if one of those guys could come in and just even be a little bit more efficient, getting 5 yards a carry, starting to average that, then it seems like there's a lot of room for a high end potential, like that legitimate top 5 potential.
Yeah, I think Gibbs, I would not feel good if Gibbs went to the Bengals, not because I don't like it for Gibbs, but because I think the market would become a runaway hype train.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
Gibbs is undersized, so I don't feel great about his workhorse potential. And I want to take. I would almost prefer him to go to a less appealing landing spot where he's still going to get passing work at least.
Sure.
And then because he was going, before the Superflex draft started, Gibbs was going I think mid to late 5th, early 6th, and so I'd be okay taking shots on him there, but I mean that's still a pretty good tier for wide receiver, and wide receiver really starts to drop off after once you start getting into the 8th, 9th round. So,
right,
if you're talking about Gibbs getting steamed up into the 4th or 3rd round, that's
too rich.
I'm scared at that price.
So let's flip the script there and then go on the tight end. If they take one of the 2 tight ends that are projected to go in the first, do you have higher hopes, or are you thinking right in the middle? Because I know, in my opinion, it takes a lot for rookie tight ends to ever show up. Kyle Pitts has been here, 3 years now? 2 or 3? He hasn't done anything. I mean, the man's non-existent. He got drafted, I think, 4th overall or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of just, it's a little scary looking at it.
Yeah, it's tough because, when you're thinking about it for late season upside, it can still happen because we, last year we had Greg Dulcich, Chigakonkwo, we had guys flashing late in the year at tight end, at least giving you usable production there. I just worry that a guy coming into Cincinnati is going to get steamed up too high. Definitely. I think in any case, though, if you are using a rookie tight end, it's probably the type of build that I'm going to try to have 3 tight ends in. Definitely. Because like you said, you're probably looking at the first half of the year as a complete wash.
Especially with someone like Irv Smith being there, who we've seen have potential in Minnesota and very much hyped up a lot last year. And, whether this is Minnesota, what their plan was, we saw Hawkinson come in, who's overall better player, come in and light the world on fire. But if you have an agenda for that player, you never know, so yeah, sitting there thinking there's possibility.
And the Bengals, I feel like people are overrating them as a tight end landing spot too, because you're talking about a guy who's going to be probably the 4th option in the passing game.
Yeah.
And this year's tight end class, Michael Mayer, he's probably, he's not the biggest ADOT guy in the world, more of a volume play. So him on the Bengals worries me. And then, you've really got to have a guy with a deep ADOT, like a Dalton Kincaid. He would interest me if he goes to the Bengals. But
yeah.
But yeah, that's tough. I do think though, if they draft a rookie tight end, and I'll probably be out on Irv Smith. I'd just rather take my bet on the rookie, unless I'm just at the end of the draft with Burrow and got sniped a bunch throughout the draft and just a desperation stack partner kind of thing. But
yeah, and I think that can be said, for majority of the tight ends that we're talking about. Excluding a few. Actually, the next 2 teams we're going to talk about, I like both their tight ends, but most of the tight ends that we're getting at, I feel like it's going to be just a dart throw and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any takes on the Mixon stuff that we've been seeing?
Well, I'll tell you this since you won't make the trade with me. I've been desperately trying to trade Mixon before anything happens in Dynasty.
Yeah.
I mean, I threw out trades to every single team besides you, hoping for the best. But I realistically, we probably aren't going to have Mixon. I'm guessing 6 games to start the year, bare minimum, if any of these charges go through. Secondly, he might get cut anyway because he's too expensive, because it seems like that's just a trend this year. If you're a bigger name running back that start, getting 26, 27, 28 into those numbers, you're getting cut or you're talking about getting moved in some way, shape, or form, because you paid too much on a guy when, the running backs you're signing guys on year contracts for $2 or $3 million versus paying these guys, 10, 12 a year. And it's just, I don't think Mixon's a Bengal come week 1.
Yeah, they've had a lot of conflicting quotes out of Cincinnati. Like they had the one a couple of weeks ago where it was like very clear that he was not going to be in Cincinnati, and then just over the last day or two, I saw one that was basically them saying like they're going to look for a running back in the draft who can complement Mixon as a 2-down back, which also doesn't really seem to bode well for Mixon if that quote is true and they're planning on just using him as a 1 and 2 down back. Like that kind of caps his upside.
Yeah, and say that almost sounds like they're trying to slowly phase him out, like the way they phrase that. I don't remember who it was, but it was some girl in the organization that basically just said, like the way she phrased, I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but she was saying something like, he's a part of the team right now, essentially, nothing deeper than that.
So, yeah, I think that's the quote I saw where I saw that and I was like, oh, he's not going to be a Bengal.
No. But yeah, overall, I think the Bengals are going to light the world on fire, though, in this division, and there's going to be a lot of points scored. So, same thing. We've kind of touched on this a couple times. At least I have personally. I like the quarterbacks and I like the 2 main receivers and potentially a running back. They're going to score a lot of points. You want a lot of them if you can get them.
Yep. And I do think, too, like Tyler Boyd didn't flash a ton last year, but he's like a sneaky contingent upside play if either of the other 2 go down. Like he's not going to put up the same numbers as them, but he'll see the uptick.
And they both have been, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both missed games last year. So, and when he did, I think Boyd had a couple good games last year. So,
yeah,
I mean, depending where he's going, and he a guy, he could definitely fill up some points on bad weeks.
All right, I think we've said it all on the Bengals. I guess we'll shift to the Browns. I don't have a ton of opinions on them, to be honest. Kind of not sure what to make of them.
I think, personally, I like Deshaun Watson for the purpose of best ball a lot this year. I think with how poorly he played last year, he'll probably slide a little bit more frequently, just given his personal history on top of being a poor quarterback last year. I think he'll slide. He's got the whole offseason this year to actually learn, the team, which he basically, came in the middle of the year and said, hope for the best. Not everybody's Baker Mayfield and comes in and drops 50 on your first week. But with that being said, I think Njoku probably is going to be one of the better middle of the road tight ends this year. I really, really like the idea of Njoku kind of getting, having those 20-point weeks that would essentially win you a week for being a tight end. With the receiving core, it's Amari Cooper, and then the rest is still kind of meh. What do you think about Elijah Moore in particular? I guess David Bell too, because they're both kind of, they're bigger name draft capital that didn't necessarily turn out to what you expect.
Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting. I don't know if you saw Matthew Berry's article. It was around the time of the combine, but it was basically like rumors that he had heard at the combine, and one of them was that the Browns are going to shift to being more pass heavy this year, which is interesting. I don't know if, again, kind of getting back to like the Ravens argument, I'm always hesitant to buy into a team style shift because like you start going down that road, it could be very easy to convince yourself to be out on Nick Chubb. And I think I don't want to do that. So as far as those wide receivers go, though, this may be some of my priors like impacting it because I was very high on Elijah Moore, like going into his rookie season and then after his rookie season. But I think I would rather have Elijah Moore than David Bell. David Bell did not. He hardly got on the field, and when he did, he didn't have anything remotely close to like nothing that would suggest that he would be a breakout candidate. So
What about Marquise Goodwin? I didn't even know that he landed there.
I know that one caught me off guard. I guess, I don't know how to feel about that. Maybe he eats into DPJ's deep ball role.
Yeah. I think, well, that's what I was going to say about DPJ is that literally, like, he could be another kind of like old school Tyler Lockett in a sense. Like, he might kind of start filling that role of, oh, I'll get you 3 points this week, but 2 weeks from now, I'm going to drop 25 on you pretty confidently on about 4 catches,
Yeah. So I'm honestly kind of surprised by where DPJ falls among the receivers. Wide receiver 59, wide receiver 60 is Adam Thielen. And then if you go up a couple spots, you got Lazard and then Darnell Mooney and Tyler Boyd. So
it's a little bit higher than I thought.
It feels like a very weird range. Like I would much rather have DPJ than Adam Thielen, but I would much rather have Boyd than DPJ.
And I would rather have Lazard on top of that too. Going back to the prior argument. But definitely not Thielen.
I think getting back to some of the comments you made, like on Watson and Njoku, they're both currently 9th in ADP at their positions. So I actually like that cost a lot for Njoku. He was a guy that I was trying to get a lot of last year. He was going, obviously I don't have like overall ADP, but last year Njoku was going like 150 and that price was pretty nice, even with Watson not playing. But he's currently tight end 9 between Evan Ingram and Pat Freiermuth, and like that feels like
seems right.
A good price.
Yeah, definitely.
Watson's a little bit trickier. He's sitting between. Actually, he's sitting just ahead of Dak and Tua, and like I get why there's market concerns with both of those guys, but man, I have a hard time taking Watson over Tua.
Yeah, as an upside thing, just because we've seen Tua have those massive number weeks as well, I guess you could throw him kind of in the conversation with Burrow in a sense, with having that massive upside, but it being incredibly rare. The thing is, it's hard with Watson because, I don't know how many years ago, it seems like he didn't play the last 2 years, basically. But, before then, he was putting up like crazy numbers where it was like 30 points per game pretty consistently. I'm like, that's going to get you there. And if he gets back to that form, that draft cost, he's going to pay off way more than what you got him for.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And that's Browns are going to be tough this year. And same thing, like you said with Chubb. It's hard for me not to talk myself out of fading from Chubb because once Watson came into the offense, Chubb like disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess when you look at the backs that he's going around, like Brees goes behind him. I already said I'd rather have Brees over him, but like you've got Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard, ETN, Ramondre all going behind Chubb. Like, I don't think that's necessarily like a gross misprice by the market, but like I think you could easily make a case for any of those guys ahead of Chubb.
I think it would be, I don't know. I think it would be hard. I've just never been on the Chubb train, apparently.
Yeah, me either. Like, he just doesn't do enough in the passing game. And I guess that's one thing I almost forgot to mention is there's still rumors that they re-sign Kareem Hunt, which obviously Hunt wasn't that involved last year, but like it does cap Chubb somewhat.
Talk about a bust. Dude, that one hurt my heart so much.
Yeah, I was overweight Kareem Hunt last year.
He was hunting for some food, that's for sure. I don't know. I'll say because I don't know much about Jerome Ford at all. I don't know if he is like a pass catching back whatsoever.
Yeah, I want to say he was a 4th round rookie pick. Let's see.
I mean, just in the aspect is if they don't add anybody or if they don't sign Hunt, that would be a good, last couple round guy to pick up in case of an injury. You would probably get, I don't think Chubb gets under, 18 touches a game very frequently next year unless they're down a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, Ford was a 5th-round pick. And, I think it's one of those things that I'm almost, when it comes to just overall roster construction for best ball, I'm almost more willing to go take more running backs early when we're doing these drafts in May, even though you run the risk of them getting hurt.
Yeah.
Versus wait and do 0 RB teams in August when we have a better idea of these depth charts. Because then, even if the Browns don't take a guy in the draft and don't re-sign Kareem Hunt, how much is Jerome Ford really going to shoot up between now and training camp?
And the thing is, just with the Browns as a whole, we've kind of seen that no matter who the running back is, whoever's the primary guy performs, it seems like. Because we had Dearness Johnson have that little breakout session for a little bit way back when Kareem and Chubb were both hurt. I don't know. So that's why I like the idea of Jerome Ford, even not knowing anything about him, essentially.
Yeah. No, I get it. We didn't even say anything about Amari Cooper. I mean, he was actually decent for a stretch.
Really good. He was really good for a while.
Another year older, though. I don't know if it's the Watson thing or what it is, but I just cannot get myself excited about any of these guys on this team.
Do you think he's going to kind of transfer into what Adam Thielen was? He's going to be very touchdown dependent, but he always somehow manages to get it done.
I mean, I could see it. He's old
the number
is
one
Amari?
there.
Isn't he? He's got to be closing in on 30.
Yeah, I think so.
28.
He's got a few years.
He'll turn 29 this summer. So.
But, I mean, just going back and looking over his stats over the years, it seems like 2019, almost 1,200 yards. 2020, 1,100 yards. 2021, that was the down year. He had 865. I don't know if he got hurt a little bit. I feel like I had him on the main league that year, and he was hurt for a little bit. But last year, he had 1160. The guy seems just to do enough consistently. Yeah. 8 touchdowns, 5 2020. 8, 9. He's putting up good touchdown numbers, especially, like I said, we know he's going to be the one in this team. And if they pass the ball, a little bit more, then with Watson kind of taking control, because they haven't had a quarterback that can throw the ball. And we know that Watson has the ability to be the guy when it comes to being, a top 3 quarterback.
Yeah. And I was having a hard time remembering where Cooper was going in these early drafts, and I just looked at the wide receiver ADP to jog my memory, and now I remember why I'm not excited about Amari Cooper. He's going right behind DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel, and he's going ahead of Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Williams, DJ Moore, and then some of the sophomores like Drake London and Christian Watson. There's just other profiles I would rather have than that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I can't believe he's touching Deebo. It still blows my mind to me that I know with McCaffrey being in San Francisco, but once again, tomorrow's topic. But
yeah,
got a lot of opinion about that one. That one's strong for me.
We better move on to Pittsburgh, because I've got some things to say, and honestly, with the Steelers being my team, I feel like I have a blind spot as far as actually figuring them out. So I'll be curious to hear what you have to say.
You already know where I want to go with it.
Yeah.
I'll let you say your piece, and then I'll,
all right. Yeah.
The outsider's opinion.
I'll be steering clear of your take here, because mine is all about Kenny Pickett. And I think he is the perfect test for how you want to play best ball, because there's other guys we've talked about, like a Mac Jones, or a lot of guys we'll talk about in the NFC tomorrow, who they might be the week 1 starter, but their odds of actually playing week 17 are probably a lot lower than the market thinks right now. Kenny Pickett, I feel very good. He's going to start every game for Pittsburgh if he's healthy. but he was so bad last year for fantasy. His touchdown rate was 1.8%. League average is closer to 4%. And I guess the case you could make in favor of Pickett is that number is not sticky. Like historically, from year to year, we see
Right.
guys bounce around. The downside is Matt Canada's back as offensive coordinator. He calls one of the most boring offenses in the NFL. Like, I just don't like if you look at my team that won 100K last year, it took 2 weeks of Burrow scoring over 25 points and then Tom Brady coming out of the blue for 40 plus in the finals. Kenny Pickett to me shapes up like the Aaron Rodgers who's going to get you 15 to 18 points on most of his good weeks. And I just do not see the case where he is winning weeks. They might be a competent offense. Like he has good weapons. He might support those weapons, but like even at the cheap price, like I have a really hard time buying Kenny Pickett.
So I would agree with that for the most part. I do see, I mean, he was, like I said, we discussed it, that he was the first quarterback taken last year, which I completely forgot about and blew my mind. But it does show that, he's got draft capital. There is potential. And, he didn't start the year last year. So he was working his way into the NFL. So I can see it where he, coming in through the season, saying, I'm the guy, knowing that he's the guy, having that next level, having the NFL experience, actually, playing the back half of the year, getting to know these guys. He's, started getting with Najee started performing better. So maybe he'll dump the ball off a little bit more, just make smarter football plays as a whole. You added one of the best receivers in the league. But
don't get me started.
But the wide receiving core as a whole is pretty solid, I think, with Allen Robinson being the fifth target, in my opinion. Like if you're saying that, you would have said that 2 or 3 years ago, that would have been crazy. So
yeah.
But yeah, so I'll let you go into your spiel about some of the running. Is it just mainly Pickett that you have the
Pickett was most of it, but I've got takes on the backfield too.
So my opinion on the backfield might be way different than yours, so I'm interested to.
Okay, I am. So I actually took Najee. I only did 2 early drafts in the little board, and I took Najee on one of them in the 4th round, and I very much regret it after having more time to think about it. He's just like, I get it. He's a bet on volume, and like the pro Najee case you could make is if Kenny Pickett takes a step forward, the offense takes a step forward, and Najee was hurt last year. So if you assume he's healthy, maybe he gets back to form. But like in either of his years, his efficiency numbers have not been good. Like the amount of 20+ yard plays that he has is very low for a running back with the amount of volume that he has. And like even if looking at the efficiency numbers, like Jaylen Warren was as good or better than him.
Yeah.
Like I know Jaylen Warren doesn't have the draft capital and Najee does. So like I'm not saying they're going to flip or anything, but at cost, like assuming the Steelers don't add a running back, like I'd rather just sprinkle in some Warren late than chase the volume. Basically, I'd rather bet on other running backs with more talent in Najee's price range than chase the volume.
That's fair enough. So I actually like Najee a lot as of right now, as I'm blinding myself with this screen. But as of right now, I absolutely love the idea of Najee, because if you look at the front half of the year for him, he was, putting up pretty consistently around 10 to 13 points. Those last 4 weeks, he got up to 13, then he got up to 14, then he got up to 15, 20, 14 and a half. So he started catching on towards the end of the year. And once again, I think it's just a fact of Pickett getting to the point of being a little more comfortable with who he is and just the whole team as a whole. So I think Najee is I like Najee as of right now, and I would currently but I would definitely take Najee at price over certain people.
Like I think I need to check that they're still close to each other. Okay, so Pollard has gone up quite a bit in price, but like back when I was drafting, and this is the reason I regret it, is like I took Najee while Pollard was still on the board, and like that feels gross to me.
That I would
assuming
agree
that Dallas doesn't add Bijan, which I guess that risk is there.
Happen.
But like Najee right now is between Aaron Jones and Ramondre, and like I'm okay with that. Like I don't think he's close to the Ramondre tier, but the backs that are going after him, I don't. There is one actually but I'll save that for tomorrow.
I think I would rather have Najee over Ramondre currently.
Really?
I think Najee's going to have more just overall work as a whole because, the Patriots backfield's always a mess and it's a little more streamlined here. I know Jaylen Warren got a lot of work at the end of the year, but I think part of that too is Najee will stay healthy. You're going to have more explosive bursts when he's on the field, and hopefully that 20-yard play thing kind of changes up a little bit more.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna need that to flip, like for Najee. But like if he's getting the volume and that does flip, then I mean he could be. I'm looking to see what his ADP was last year because I thought it was.
I feel like
really
he was
early.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought he would be like 5 or 6 last year even.
He was at the 1-2 turn in 12-team best ball.
Yeah, so probably about 5 or 6. Yeah, I don't know. I'll say I wouldn't touch any of the receivers though. Like I said, you could take Pickens. Pickens probably is going to be the one that has the most upside.
I have a tough time here because Pickens to me is like kind of like a Gabe Davis where like he has the flashes, but he's not a target earner. And he's in an offense with an elite target earner.
Mm-hmm.
So like Pickens is like I want to buy into him, but it just feels like Charlie Brown going to kick the football.
Yeah. Well, I kind of view it as like a Chase Claypool situation. He had, like you said, he had those flashes and looked really, really good. And then he might just disappear.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possible outcomes for him.
Deontay, though, like he's kind of a guy that I want to be in on. He had I don't remember the exact stat, but I think it was like the most targets without a touchdown at one point.
Yeah, I had Deontay on a couple teams last year, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it was a rough time. Yeah. But especially like that 1.8 touchdown rate for Kenny Pickett, if we do get that to regress to the mean, like I think Deontay Johnson, because when he's getting that amount of targets, like even if he just gets like 5 touchdowns, he's going to overperform.
Yeah, that seems fair. That's hard to argue. But most importantly, the most important player on the Patriots, Jesus, the Steelers is Pat Freiermuth. Someone I firmly believe in is going to be probably the most consistent tight end this year, with flashes of upside. Probably, I don't think he's going to put up above 20 super frequently, but I see a lot of games of him getting 6 to 7 catches for about anywhere from 50 to 80 yards.
Yeah.
And being a big guy in the end zone, you like throwing to him in the end zone.
Pulling up his game log just out of curiosity.
He was consistent, I'll tell you that. I almost started him as flex in Dynasty for a little while.
Yeah, I guess my thing that I struggle with is he's kind of starting to fall into the range where like I would just rather wait several rounds and take like slightly worse options who can like alternate splashing on the touchdowns. What the Freiermuth ceiling game gonna look like for trying to advance in the playoffs?
I mean, do you think you would get He has the possibility for a 2-touchdown game. So that would put him at 12, right? Well, 13.2 bare minimum right there.
Yeah. Okay, so that
I would say probably you're sitting around 22 would be the highest I could see him getting.
And that's more than enough. Like you can get a win with 10 points at tight end in the playoffs.
Yeah. Because like I said, I mean, just last year he was so consistent. He had a few like off games, but I just pulled it up and it was as consistent as I remember it. 12 and a half.
So I'm
12.
gonna test your love for the Muth here. I'll just use the overall ADPs, even though they're not a perfect comparison. Freiermuth is at 118. And Njoku's right there at 116.
Ooh. In best ball, definitely I think I would go Njoku. I just think the ceiling's higher there for that.
Going to the guys above Njoku, you got Evan Ingram or Darren Waller. Waller's going at pick 91 compared to Muth at 118.
Yeah, I would definitely rather wait 2 rounds and go Muth over Waller. I don't think Waller's going to be that good this year. I mean, how often do we see tight ends change team, excluding Hawkinson, and just do what they were? I mean, and Waller didn't ever look good last year.
Yeah, he's been injury prone these last couple of years.
We know about Ingram's obvious upside, so
yeah, he's hard to fade. If we look at some options lower down, you've got Michael Mayer, presumed number 1 rookie tight end. He's going at pick 180. I would assume, I would just bake in that's going to go up like 2 rounds once we actually know where he's playing.
Yeah. I don't know. Like you said, if you're looking, it depends on the build, obviously. I mean, that makes a whole big difference. Because if you got a lot of like boomer bust guys, there is some like safety in having a player that you're going to get 10 points from in that slot. I think it just kind of depends on where your build is at in that point in the draft. If you would want to go Freiermuth or kind of just wait and take a shot on, flyer at the end with some of these lower round, lower pick, less known people at this point.
And I think that's what I struggled with him last year is he just happened to be going in a range where I was really content taking the Alexander Madison, Rashad White types. So it'll be interesting to like get a feel for the actual draft rooms and see if he's in a pocket where because if you're doing a 3 tight end build and he's your first tight end, like that actually feels pretty solid.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Yeah, it seems like you at least know that you're getting something out of your tight end spot every week.
Yeah.
Versus, the potential 3 points because one guy caught a 20-yard pass.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit these over-unders real quick. 11.5 on the Bengals.
I'll go under.
Under?
Yeah, I like the Bengals, but that line seems the AFC North is always a slog, no matter how good these teams are.
Baltimore over/under 9.5.
I'll take the under just with the Lamar stuff. Even if Lamar's there, like I have questions.
Yeah, that I agree with. I think I'm gonna go over on the Bengals. I didn't go there. I just think their offense is gonna be too good and to stop. Ravens, I'll go under. Browns, same thing, 9.5.
This one's close. I think I'm leaning the under. I just with how bad Watson looked last year and how they completely phased out Chubb while he was there, like things could go wrong fast.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under. I think their offense is gonna be better and there's gonna be points scored, but I don't think they're gonna be an overall good team. I think there's still gonna be a lot of overall mistakes made. All right, this one's an easy one for me. Steelers over/under 8.5.
That's an easy over for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They always finish better than 50%. 50%
And
better.
I didn't save the graphic, but Warren Sharp had like the strength of schedule based on the Vegas win totals, and Steelers is easiest in the league, and they were pretty difficult the previous year. So I think it's going to be pretty easy for them to take a step forward, even if it doesn't necessarily translate for fantasy.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot. I really think every team besides the Bengals in this division are gonna have 9 wins.
Yeah, dude, the AFC as a whole is just nuts.
Yeah,
Like these teams are all, except for the division we're about to go to next, these teams are all like reasonable shots at the playoffs.
I think this is. Well, I don't know which one's next off the top of my head. But I think this one's my hot take.
Oh boy. All right. Well, we'll move on. I'll let you give your.
All right. So, what team wants a new quarterback, wants to move up in the draft, needs receivers?
Tennessee.
What team can trade away their high round draft pick to draft a quarterback? That could give up their spot to draft a quarterback.
Arizona.
I see there's a world where D-Hop goes to Tennessee to be the one, and the Titans give up enough capital, draft a quarterback, get D-Hop. They got 2 problems fixed in one right there. And I could see Tannehill going to Arizona to start the season, at least until Kyler comes around.
That could actually make some sense. They're going to be very interesting to watch what they do from I think they're at the 11th spot. Mm-hmm. Tennessee is. So yep. The place I thought you were originally going with that was Trey Lance. Like, I've seen him linked to the Titans. I guess the GM the Titans just brought in is the one who was in San Fran. I don't know if he was the GM or if he was like an assistant GM, but he was there when they traded up for Lance. So maybe that's a reason they won't go after Lance.
Yeah, he knows better.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we've seen Lance flash here and there, but I don't think there's any world where Tannehill's not the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year. I mean, we just seen him be like kind of that middle of the road, like Jimmy G, Derek Carr, like all them kind of people. I mean, that's just what he's done and what he's always been. So
Tannehill is interesting to me because he's super cheap in best ball, but like if he stays in Tennessee and they don't draft a quarterback, I think he's starting as long as he's healthy. And if another team like Atlanta trades for him, I think he's starting when he's healthy. So like you could get a sneaky week 17 quarterback for really cheap, which is going to be more important this year with quarterbacks getting steamed up.
Yeah, literally next to nothing. Yeah, I'll say when it comes to the receiver room, like I said, they don't really have anybody. We kind of have seen Treylon Burks flash when he's been healthy, but I mean, the man couldn't catch a break every time he got back on the field. I remember, I'm an Eagles fan for whoever still listening at this point. But I mean, I traded up in our draft at the time. I traded up and I drafted Treylon Burks in our dynasty draft because I firmly believed when AJ Brown left that he was going to fill that role to a T. And every single time this man got out on the field, I just remember the Eagles game where he got that concussion, and I was like, man, he just got back. And it just seemed like it was never ending for him. So they need, if they're going to have any shot at trying to actually move forward as, you know, even as a chance to win this division, which I think it's pretty safe who's going to win this division. But, I mean, they got to get some other receivers in here. Somebody.
Yeah, and the thing is, picking at 11, like, there's just For fantasy, there's a lot of different ways it could go because, like you said, they need a receiver. This draft class isn't that strong, like to the point that taking a guy at 11 is a borderline reach.
Yeah.
Not a crazy reach, but it's a bit of a reach. I've seen people suggest that they could take Bijan at 11 and then trade Henry away. And then obviously there's a chance that they could go after a quarterback, either trade up or take one who's still there at 11. So like they feel like a very hard team to get any feel for right now.
Yeah, I think I've seen them like a lot of up to, like I said, a lot of up to 30 with Arizona. And now when I taken that and run with it in my brain, I kind of thought of the most insane scenario, I think, but it'd be interesting to see what would happen.
Can I just, I think that's a pretty gross outcome for D-Hop.
Yeah, as a whole, yeah. Like, I think it would be a knockdown because he'd have a rookie quarterback.
Yeah. In a run heavy offense with Treylon Burks there as well.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of the lesser outcomes of what you would want for D-Hop. But, D-Hop's on his way out of the NFL. I mean, he's got to be close to 32 now.
Yeah. While you're looking that up, just a quick reference here. Treylon is going off the board, wide receiver 39, around guys like Deontay, Kadarius Toney, Brandon Cooks, Jahan Dotson.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate the idea of that. To get a wide receiver 1 on a team that, with a player that could take a step forward.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Like, I mean, George Pickens is going ahead of him. I'm not crazy about that.
No. Hopkins will be 31 this year.
Okay, yeah, so he's getting pretty close.
Yeah. So,
like, I guess we didn't touch on it, but since we're talking about Hopkins, like, I think he was going late 3rd, early 4th in the early drafts. And like, if let's say he hits the nuts landing spot and goes to the Bills or Chiefs, like realistically, how high would you feel comfortable taking him?
I wouldn't like it as much on the Bills as compared to the Chiefs. The Bills, I kind of knock him. I wouldn't change much because we don't know the quarterback situation in Arizona currently. So I probably wouldn't change him much there. It kind of depends with Kyler and, whoever's subbing for Kyler in the meantime. We saw that he still can produce, decent scores even when, Kyler wasn't there, even though the Dortch came in and kind of stole some of his glory a couple of those games. But
yeah,
in Kansas City, I mean, he could be probably like a mid-second round, I think. I mean, he could very much be the one on a incredibly high power offense that throws for 300 plus every single game.
Yeah.
You would imagine that he's going to be getting, between him and Kelsey, they're each going to get at least 75 yards apiece. So that's putting him with over, 10 points a game with plenty of touchdown upside.
Yeah. I think the struggle there is I agree with you. Kansas City's probably the better spot for him. It just feels like if he goes there, people are going to lose their minds. And it's like, are we really going to want to bet on a 31-year-old wide receiver?
Yeah. But also you got to look at it from the aspect too, is we had Julio in Tennessee the 1 year, and, Julio had kind of been out of his levels of elite at that point. But, it's just, when does the drop off happen?
Yeah.
So, yeah. How do you feel about Derrick Henry as a whole if he stays? I don't really see him going anywhere. I don't know where you would go. Who would, like, with all the available running backs out there currently, I think it would be really hard to trade Derrick Henry when you probably could get potentially someone like Zeke even on like a cheap, like $4 million contract, 1 year, $4 million contract, when I don't know what Derrick Henry's making. I'll look that up real quick.
along that line, you got a guy like Fournette out there still as well. So I don't. So my problem, or I guess my thing with Derrick Henry, like I've been fading Derrick Henry for years now. 2-3 years ago, I had him shove it down my throat and just absolutely wreck me. But like last year when he was going late first, I had, you know, I think I was at like 2% Derrick Henry across my portfolio last year.
Mhm.
He's going more like early to mid third this year, but he's a year older and I think, is it the 1,500 touch cliff? I don't remember the exact number, but there's, X number of touches for NFL running backs before they completely fall off a cliff. And Derrick Henry has passed that number. So
At 1877. That's crazy. That's a
yeah,
lot.
that is a ton. So I'm okay fading Derrick Henry even in the third round. Like, I guess I don't know if there's really a landing spot where I could see myself getting behind Derrick Henry, like just at that age and that use. Like,
Yeah.
if Derrick Henry is the reason I lose in the playoffs, like I'll just live with that.
He's making 12.5 a year right now. So, like I said, with all the other available running backs out there right now, I just see it hard somebody paying for that when like there's just so many people right now you could go and sign and just get them on, know they've had elite potential in the past, barring they're not Derrick Henry. I'm kind of on the borderline of being, is this the year?
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm going to be one of those people with him in particular that I'm just going to stick on it until we see otherwise.
Yeah, I get that. I've had those guys in fantasy before where you just keep going down with the ship. I feel like more so for me, kind of in that vein, it's the like rushing quarterbacks who've shown us absolutely nothing. Like
Yeah, exactly.
2 years in a row of going down with the Trey Lance ship.
Yep. And even Lamar, it feels like after last year.
Yeah.
Lamar was hard. Yeah, otherwise, Chiga Kwanko, probably another one of those guys that I would put in the Njoku category of having that high end potential, but obviously a little bit more risky of a pick since we didn't really see a whole lot of him at the beginning of the year. He, caught fire at the end of the year, but
Yeah, he's an interesting one for me. He's going tight end 13. He's going about 30 picks later than Freiermuth, which I think is appropriate. But
yeah,
like Chig he's kind of starting to get into the tier of like you're just taking a flyer. So at that point, it's kind of like I'd rather just wait and get somebody later who offers a similar profile.
only 23 years old.
I will say, and this is a decent segue into another team on this, is Dalton Schultz is going ahead of Chig. Give me Chig all day.
Yeah, I don't say. Well, I guess we don't know. I mean, it depends a lot. Personally, I guess we can kind of transfer into Houston with that. With who Houston takes at number one.
You mean two?
I mean, it has two. Excuse me.
I was like, wait,
should have been one.
Something? It is. We are like very close to the draft. The news is.
It should have been one.
Yeah.
But Davis Mills said, no, I'm going to increase my chances of starting next year.
Yeah.
It kind of depends like I said, who they take. If they go with one of the more mobile quarterbacks or one of the pocket passers, we really don't have a lot of running quarterbacks in this year's draft class. I just think no matter what, like you said, I would rather have Chig over Dalton Schultz. I don't think Dalton Schultz is going to do much. I feel bad for that guy. He could have got paid in Dallas and last year and then, have Dak with an elite defense and
isn't it
everything
else. A 1-year deal with Houston too?
Yeah, I think
it's going to play for a year with a rookie in a crowded offense on a team that's going to suck.
Yeah. Well, you never know. They might be okay. Didn't realize they had like their entire team leave. You look at it like that.
there's a lot of names there, but they're all like outside of Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
There aren't really a lot of relevant guys there.
Yeah, because I was going to say the tight end thing kind of was like, because Atkins had games of flashing, and I think OJ Howard. I mean, I know OJ Howard caught the pass that made him the number 2 pick.
Yeah,
that's what I remember from him last year. But I mean, Dalton Schultz is definitely better than both of them.
So my big takeaway from the South, I guess I had two, but one of them was like Houston. There's way too many mouths to feed in this offense to get excited about anybody. Yeah. Like Pierce was interesting, and that will now Singletary's there, so that's a mess. Like to me, if there's a wide receiver out of this group that's interesting, it's Nico, but like. There's enough guys there with Noah Brown and Mechie and Schultz. And like, I don't think Robert Woods has much left in the tank, but the other guys, and they have 2 picks in the top 15. So wide receivers on the table.
Yeah. I think they have the highest odds to draft JSN last time I checked.
Yeah, I believe it. I'll double check and see if I don't know if they're on this chart or not. Doesn't look like they are. Oh, yeah, there you go. Highest odds for JSN. So.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense. They don't have anybody. I do see Robert Woods as being like not Brandon Cooks light of last year. Is what it was. Like super uninvolved. But I feel like
just out there running some wind sprints.
Yeah, exactly. I'll say that's like I used to view like Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks essentially almost as the same player. With Cooks having just a little bit more safety, it seems like he'd always just a little bit more consistent. But yeah, I think they replaced Cooks with Woods with that mindset, and I don't think he's gonna do anything. Like I said, Pierce was exciting until Singletary was there. So I mean, really the only person. Maybe whatever quarterback they draft, depending if you just want to throw and hope for the best.
That's what I was about to say. Like, I think now's a good time to talk the rookies just because we got the Colts in this division as well.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, just purely from a best ball standpoint, like, I'm okay drafting all 4 of these top guys because, like we were talking about it before we went live, is that last year, like Malik Willis went 3rd round, got a chance to start. Sam Howell went 5th round, got a chance to start. So when you talk about these guys who are going to go top 10, like even Will Levis, a guy who like seems like everybody in the fantasy community hates him. Like if he goes to Houston, he's almost certainly going to be starting the last month of the season. So
I think
like
probably starting right off the bat.
Yeah, at his cost, he's going at like pick 200. I mean, he's free. So I think those are the kind of guys you want to be adding on at the end of drafts, especially if you get blocked out of like the elite options at quarterback.
And it's so funny because we can sit here and say, and we've said this about a few teams now where it's just like, yeah, you don't want to touch them, But I mean, I think there goes like a lot to be said that there is still some potential like within these teams just because we're saying we don't like them. Or I'm personally saying don't touch them. I mean, there is still definitely like gold to be found. I mean, even if you like would have gone back a couple of years when it was Rojo and Fournette, competing in the backfield for Tampa, if you would have gone Fournette that year, you found gold in that. Trying to think of a comparison last year. ETN, just because we got the Jaguars pulled up here. Once James Robinson got traded, I mean, ETN lit the world on fire, so they're not that you wouldn't have drafted them last year, but you would have drafted them with a lot less high regard at least. So, one of these receivers will probably hit this year. Who it'll be is as good of a guess as anybody.
Yeah, I think along those lines, like I was saying, Nico is at least interesting to me. I mean, he was a little bit of a higher ADOT guy, whereas like if John Mechie comes back, he's more your underneath slot option. But like let's And it sounds like John Mechie, thankfully, is going to be able to get back on the field. But like, let's just play out the scenario where he has complications, doesn't get back. Texans pass on rookie wide receivers, and Robert Woods is just complete dust. Now all of a sudden you've got Nico Collins and Noah Brown with, a rookie quarterback.
Because they're going to be losing games. I mean, we know that for sure.
Yeah.
What do you do when you lose games? You got to throw the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lions are a perfect example of that last year. And I know Houston definitely lost a lot of games last year. You don't get the number 2 pick without losing a lot of games. They got to throw the ball to try to catch up. So there's points to be scored. Just a matter of, like I said, picking the right person out of a group. And I would agree with you. As of right now, those 2 names in particular are probably what the best bet would be.
Yeah.
And you can get these guys in almost the last round of your draft for the most part. So,
yeah, I think there's started to be a little bit of Nico steam, up, but we're talking like pick 180 versus pick 200. I mean, It's still the opportunity cost.
You're getting at the end of your draft still.
Yeah. I will say I wanted to talk about Anthony Richardson because he's another guy where like I'm ready to just hammer him for the first month of best ball. And then because I don't see a scenario where we talk ourselves out of him. I think the longer the summer goes on, the more we're going to be talking up his upside. So like, even if the cost is just steadily increasing, I want to get as much as I can early. And then that way I don't have to feel like I'm chasing him up the board at the end of the summer.
And realistically, he ends up on one of these 2 teams. I think, I mean, I don't think
unless we get a trade, but I was looking at the
Levis
odds.
Could even go at 3rd.
Yeah. There's been a lot of buzz about Levis to both of these teams. And like, to me, A-Rich is the kind of guy who would fall in the draft, but I checked the odds. DraftKings has the odds of Anthony Richardson top 10, the same as the odds of Bryce Young going number 1, which is like borderline lock.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. I'm pulling it up on FanDuel now to see where they're.
And I guess while you look that up, like the reason I am so in on A-Rich, like obviously he blew away the combine, like more athletic than Cam Newton. The issues are with the accuracy, but he takes shots downfield at a high rate. So if he hits, he's going to be an absolute smash for fantasy between the deep throws and the rushing. Like it's as simple as that.
Right. No, I completely agree with that. But that's kind of just what I was touching on earlier is that he's really the only mobile quarterback we have in this year's draft. So it'll be interesting. Wherever these quarterbacks go are going to deeply affect the rest of the team. Right now, currently on FanDuel, it's Tyree Wilson is plus 125 at number 2 overall. Seems interesting. I didn't know that. But Levis is 220.
They're both plus money there. Tyree and Will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus 125 and then 220 for Levis. Shoot. Anthony Richardson at 2 is plus 4,000. So I don't think that one's happening.
Yeah. I
also
have a hard time seeing him fall out of the top 15. Like when you have a Tennessee and now Green Bay at 13, like they're a sneaky spot too.
Depends how much they trust Jordan Love on that. We can talk about that one tomorrow though.
Yeah.
Number 4 overall, just because we're probably going to switch to the Colts here in a second. So number 4 pick, they got Levis at 130, CJ Stroud at 210, and Richardson at 300. So they're all like right there, pretty much. Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, just trying to think through like the A-Rich stuff and like truly how high would I draft him? I mean, like last year, 11th, 12th round was where guys like Tua, Trevor Lawrence, and Fields were going.
Mhm.
And we've seen the QBs get more expensive like this year compared to last. So like I feel like if Anthony Richardson is going after the 10th round, like I have no problem drafting him.
Yeah, I would say, and probably in some spot like that, you would want to get a guy that has a little bit more of that safety, just to make sure you're still putting up consistent points on the count that he might not play. You know, he might be playing week 5 or 6, he might be playing super early, but there's also that chance that he's not playing even until week 13.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Davis Mills has shown that he can be okay at times. You know,
Yeah.
same thing with Minshew. He's been pretty okay across the board. So it's not like these teams have like awful quarterbacks, but definitely on the lower threshold of, you know, these rookies are going to be better probably coming into year 2 for sure. You know, with the learning curve in year 1.
Yeah. Any since we're kind of shifting to the Colts, any major takes here? I guess I have one minor one, but otherwise they didn't really do much to move the needle for me.
No, I'll say seeing the Colts, you know, in person the last 2 years, I haven't been super thrilled by anything besides seeing Buckner, you know, 10 feet away from me and awing in his size.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor, you know, it's could be the 101. You know, there's the argument to be made for that. But I mean, it's scary because you know they're going to score less points. None of the receivers really looked that good. Like Pittman was a major letdown last year.
Yeah.
I mean, said Jonathan Taylor could have close to 30 touches a game here and there, and literally, you know, put up Madden kind of numbers in games. So it's like once again, it's just kind of when you're drafting that early of a slot, it's hard if you want to take a guy that may only have his team score 15-ish, you know, like average 15 points a game, depending, you know, like a couple touchdowns, field goals here and there. Just kind of depends where I don't, you know, see a super high upside with the Colts.
Yeah. I guess my one takeaway was on Alec Pierce in that like I want to take a fair amount of shots on him in drafts. I think he was decent enough. Like he's not a guy that I'm looking at like, oh, he could be a breakout, like come out of nowhere and be a wide receiver 1, but like I think he could be usable at a pretty cheap price. And Isaiah McKenzie doesn't scare me at all. Like if you couldn't
No,
do it with Josh Allen, you're not going to do it with a rookie quarterback. The tight ends don't worry me. Like their tight end room is it's all athletic guys that we would like if no one else was around.
yeah, definitely.
So
So let me ask you this then: would you rather take Pittman or Pierce? Solely, I'm assuming Pittman's ADP is significant. Significant. Oh my gosh, much higher
yeah,
than Pierce is at this point.
yeah, it's basically double. So Pittman's going at pick 80 in Superflex, and Pierce is going at 172 in Superflex. Yeah, I would rather have Pierce because when you add in like the rookie quarterback aspect, I just have a hard time getting behind Pittman. He was a guy that I really liked coming into last year, and it just did not come
Fell
together.
flat. It
So
definitely fell flat. But you know, I mean, same argument that we made with the Texans is there's gonna be someone out of the receivers that scores decently for best ball. I mean, realistically, in my mind, I do think Pittman would be my choice, but at ADP, I do agree that Pierce ultimately kind of looks better. Who's Pittman going around in that range? Because I think that kind of obviously alters my opinion of who I truly want.
yeah, so Pittman, the guys ahead of him are Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, JSN. Tyler Lockett is going behind him. that feels real gross.
I like Tyler Lockett.
Give me Tyler Lockett all day. Over Pittman. This is probably not completely up to date with the latest news swings, but Jamison Williams is going a couple spots behind him. And then you've got Godwin, Ayuk, Marquise Brown. So
yeah, I think I'd be passing on Pittman in this.
I do too.
Especially if they end up with Richardson, just knowing that, they might only have games where they're passing for under 200 yards. That's not a lot of pie to share.
Well, and I think the other thing too, like the other side of that argument, if they take Levis, you could potentially stack Levis and Pierce late,
relatively cheap
in a draft.
Yeah, for next to nothing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Well, the one other takeaway I had on the Jags was my fear as a Travis Etienne dynasty manager of them drafting a running back. There's been a lot of reporting about them visiting with rookies. So especially given the makeup of this rookie class, where it's a lot of smaller backs who are more in the receiving game. Like ETN was kind of a bust last year because he didn't get the receiving work that he showed in college or that we want out of him. And I'm worried that they're going to take a little scat back in the draft and just turn ETN into a 2-down guy.
Well, even looking at their wide receiver core plus, Ingram, that's pretty solid across the board, so I can definitely see that, if they kind of ran a little bit more just like wide receiver screens and stuff, that would take away some of the normal dump offs that ETN might get, those short yard situations. It would be hard to, lean in the direction of ETN. But if they don't take anybody, I think there's a lot of upside still with ETN. I remember watching a lot of Jaguars last year for whatever reason, and it just seemed like he was breaking off run after run after run. The dude is a chunk play monster.
Yeah. He's definitely the type of back I want to bet on. I just wish I felt more secure that he was going to be the 3-down guy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and even we saw a lot of Jermichael Hasty at the end of last year. And who else did they got? Snoop Connor? I don't think he did.
Yeah, Snoop Connor, 5th round pick last year, never really got on the field, even with, some guys getting banged up. He just never got on the field.
But yeah, we saw Hasty. I know Hasty had at least one really good game towards the end of the year. And you got these guys that kind of, like I said, it reminds me of like the Cleveland situation of it doesn't matter who's there. Whoever is in that running back slot is going to score for the week. Now that Dearness is there too, like I said, I just really, really think that they're just going to kind of tack it on and you don't really have to think much about it. I think whoever's the running back in Jacksonville will do pretty well this year.
Yeah. The one thing I'll add with Jacksonville is like they're a fun team to make the bet on. Like Lawrence kind of started to break out near the end last year. That wide receiver room is fun. They're really expensive though, relative to how good they are as a team. Like it started to back off a little bit at the end, but even for single QB leagues, Lawrence was going in the 3rd round at times. In early drafts. That's just too rich. Like,
yeah, no way.
I was out on Herbert last year when he was going in the 4th. So like, if Lawrence keeps going up there, I'm just not going to have much. And it's not even because I don't like him. It's just like at cost. I don't think it's a good bet.
I think he's proven like at this point that he can be great. Like Jacksonville was. I think Jacksonville is just a team everybody likes to root for in general. Just like. They like the coaches, they like the people, just like the whole Urban Meyer thing when that got turned around. It's a whole new world, So I think after seeing that, just fans in general kind of gravitated towards them and became somebody they want to root for. It's like Dan Campbell with the Lions. It's same thing, just different.
Yeah.
Overall, I really do think Trevor Lawrence will have a great year. I think he's one of those guys that could push closer to 5,000 yards on the year. Just depends how much they utilize the running backs as actual rushers. They still could do dunk and dinks and turn into big yardage plays. So
Yeah.
I think if anybody wasn't Mahomes or Burrow, I think Lawrence would be the next guy to push that mark.
Yeah, I think so. Any other takeaways on the Jags? I don't really have a great sense for how I want to play this wide receiver room.
No, I would if I was to bet on one, I'd bet on Kirk. I'm sure he's still the highest ADP.
I don't think he is. I think Ridley's higher.
Well, that surprises me. I mean,
there's some hype for Ridley.
I mean, before Ridley's breakout year, I was very, very, very big on him. I made sure. I think I had him in every league I played in that year. I might have. I don't remember that far back, but that was year 3 for him. And that's when, it was always about the year 3 breakouts with these receivers versus the sophomore year breakout.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just anybody that doesn't play an entire year that comes back and plays the next year, it just doesn't seem like they live up to expectations ever.
Yeah. ADP wise, Ridley is wide receiver 18. Kirk is wide receiver 26. 18.
Wow.
But we're seeing wide receivers fly off the board in these drafts. So that's like a 3rd round pick on Calvin Ridley.
There is no way you could convince me to make that pick.
I have a feeling we are collectively not going to have much Jacksonville between the Lawrence and Ridley prices.
Ingram's one of the guys too. Like I said, he's, as I've kind of mentioned on the tight ends that I've touched on, he's another one of those guys that could score you 20 and be a week winner. Who knows if he's actually going to hold his consistency that he did last year on top of, the super high ceiling. Could disappear. I mean, he did it as a Giant. He could very much do it as a Jag.
Yeah, and I think the tough part there is I like Ingram and the upside with him, but a lot of times, it's not always feasible, but more often than not, I'm going to want to stack a tight end with my quarterback. So if I'm out on Lawrence, I'll probably have less Ingram than I otherwise would.
And that's the other thing about Ingram too, is that they didn't sign him any longer. They franchise tagged him, so they're not necessarily even confident in the fact that he'll repeat. They just wanted to give him another year to be like, all right, really prove it. So hopefully we'll see high numbers out of him again, because I think he's somebody like in a redraft situation I'd have quite a bit of. But once again, same situation as far as a team comp when it comes to best ball. I won't have a lot of them. I'll probably start him a lot in DFS because I think Lawrence will be a little bit cheaper when it comes that time around versus some of the other higher end quarterbacks. But we'll see.
Yeah,
we got a lot of time for that.
Yeah. All right, we will wrap up with the AFC West, a division where I had to expand the amount of roster spots on these depth charts because the Chiefs is just a cluster of guys.
I think the Chiefs is we can probably be done with the Chiefs in about 30 seconds.
Yeah,
draft Mahomes, draft Kelsey.
Real quick, we forgot to do over-unders on the South.
Oh, yeah. So 10.5 for the Jags. I would probably say over just because of who they're playing against in the division.
Yep, that's my argument exactly.
Titans, I'm gonna say Titans. It's tough for me because it depends who their quarterback is. If it's Tannehill, I'm saying over 7.5. I would say they get to 9.
Yeah, 7.5 is pretty low. I think I'll take the over. Vrabel is not the type of coach who's going to go along with a tank job. So
no, absolutely not. Colts at 6.5. I would probably say under 6.5. I don't think I could see the Colts having another bad year just because they're in the quarterback blend. So get another high round draft pick. Hope for the best.
I'll go over.
Seems reasonable. Any reasoning? Just 6.5 being low?
It just seems low. It's probably too much of like recency bias, excluding last year. The Colts have always been like decent for the most part during my lifetime. So
yeah, I could see him doing bad and trading JT while you still can get something for him.
Yeah, that seems feasible.
But CMC got moved last year, so we'll see if that becomes a thing. And last but not least, Texans at 5.5. That's hard to argue that that's going to be an over. They could very much be a 3-win team.
Yeah, the offense just feels gross. Like, so I'll go under on them. And I think too, like especially if they do go Tyree Wilson at 2,
100%.
Like, it'd be very clear that they're just going for Caleb Williams next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. All right. Moving on to the West.
Chiefs draft Mahomes and Kelsey. If you're happy, you want to take a risk on somebody. I would say Tony and Justin Ross.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't have much hope in Sky Moore. Again, because like I personally would be fine taking flyers on them, but because it's the Chiefs, the cost is going to be more than it should be.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Same with Richie James. Like he's fine, but it's just so spread out. It's like the opposite of the Dolphins. You're going to have like 5 or 6 guys get over 600 yards.
Yeah, and it's just nothing's going to be productive. The thing is, you're going to get big games out of these people. You just don't know who it is. And if you only get 1 or 2 starts out of these people, it's not really necessarily worth pick, depending on the cost. So that's why I don't like taking somebody like Tony. I had a lot of MBS last year.
I was going to say, I think that's one thing I learned. Like, I was so in on these big ADOT, like the huge ADOT guys, the like 20+ yard, like an MVS who's just not a target earner. And it works out way less than you think it does as far as them actually hitting splash plays.
Yeah.
The only other thing was there's been a lot of smoke lately about McKinnon going back to the Chiefs, which
that's what I was about to say.
If he does, Pacheco is going to be – he's overpriced right now if McKinnon comes back.
Yeah, that's literally the point I was going to make is Jerick McKinnon was really, really a critical part of their offense last year. So if he comes back, that's definitely a sneaky little pick that probably wouldn't have super, especially right now, could get
I think
for next to nothing.
If we assume the Best Ball Mania opens on Monday after the draft, like McKinnon is probably not even going to be in the player pool. Right. Because he wasn't getting drafted in these early drafts. So, like, you could potentially load up on a bunch of 18th round McKinnon the first week of Best Ball Mania.
Yeah. Don't draft Clyde. Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah. Only pain there.
Yeah. All right.
My big takeaway for this division was the Chargers, and it was because they add Kellen Moore. Like, Justin Herbert's ADOT has been laughably low these last couple of years, and I think Kellen Moore can open it up. The risk there is like assuming that these wide receivers can actually stay healthy. So I think that's the big question there.
I like what I learned from this beautifully made chart here is Chargers have done nothing.
Yeah, I know. I kind of did a double take there, and I'm still like, really? They did nothing? But it makes sense because all offseason we were hearing like Keenan Allen's going to be a cap cut. Gerald Everett's going to be a cap cut, and they somehow found a way to keep both of them on the roster. But
we all you and me both firmly believe that it literally the cap is the theory.
It's made up. Yeah.
It's just something to make people stress and topic of conversation. So
Yeah.
I don't even address that. But I mean, if you look at their offense, they don't really need to add anything. Some of these guys are getting old, and like Eckler being the prime example, wants to leave, and he's old for a running back. Same thing, Keenan Allen's getting real old. You got to get guys in here to replace them. And
I think Eckler, until we get some clarity, like I might be a little bit underweight on Eckler because there's not a lot of places he could go to get a better role than what he's had with the Chargers. And even if he stays, like with the change to Kellen Moore, you're not going to have quite as many 3-yard dump offs to Eckler. So no. I think he's so good, but I think we could see a bit of a step back.
Yeah, I agree. I think Eckler, is he about number 4 overall right now? About 4 in best ball.
Let's see.
It would just be hard for me right now to pick Eckler after such a down season last year as the Chargers as a whole. And they just don't excite me. Like, none of the players excite me anymore because I feel like it's been more of the same.
Yeah. Like, we know at this point that Josh Palmer is just a guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to work out. So Eckler is RB3 just ahead of Bijan. Which, like, it's so
crazy.
It's so gross at the top at running back. Like, I know we talked about it earlier, but JT, Eckler, Bijan, Saquon. And like, I know Bijan's not gross, but he's a huge question mark.
Well, yeah, that's what I want to say. You're picking a guy and you don't know his team. Like, imagine he does go somewhere like New England.
Yeah.
That pick doesn't pay off. 100% of the time, that's not paying off.
Yeah.
Trying to think of some other nasty spots for him.
I think
are actually plausible.
I feel like my ideal landing spot for Bijan, as far as like for me to get a shit ton of him in best ball, is Washington.
Yeah.
You've got 2 other backs there, an offense that doesn't excite people. But like, I think Bijan would be the guy by the end of the season there.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, to actually get a decent stock of him, that's probably the best spot. I feel like the same. I mean, his highest betting odds right now are to Atlanta at 8. Because I've been following that very heavily, hoping he slips to 10. Howie did say they're going to draft the best player available at 10, so that makes me hopeful. But with him going to Atlanta, I feel like the situation is relatively similar. Just they're worse. Like, the Falcons are worse. They don't have like Washington's defense is a little bit better, so that just means they gotta throw the ball a little bit more. So if Bijan gets a little more passing work in Atlanta, then, and I mean, we've seen it done with Cordero.
Yeah.
And taken, and for somebody of that age just to show up and end up being a top 10 running back is insane. Imagine with somebody with all the potential and talent that Bijan has.
Yeah, and I think if he goes there, like, Algier and CPAT are completely out of the picture. Like, they're just done. And maybe the market is sharp enough to know that if Bijan goes to Washington, that those other like B-Rob and Gibson are also toast.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that's overconfidence on my part that people are going to be scared off. But
in Washington too, it's another one of those groups where, like, no matter who the running back is, it seems like they've always been, when there is one main guy, it seems like they have been good. Like, B-Rob was good for a little while. Gibson, just a couple of years ago was like everybody's champion for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Bijan in Washington could be a pretty good spot. I mean, LA is probably like the most realistic, best spot he could end up if they are trying to pawn off Eckler.
Yeah, I think if he somehow gets out of the top 10, like the Chargers, I think that's where the fall would stop. So
yeah, somebody's going to trade up for him if that's the case.
Yeah.
like I said, I don't want to see anything better than the Eagles trading with the Vikings and drafting them in front of the Cowboys.
That would be golden. I guess the only other thing maybe to talk about with the Chargers is the rookie wide receivers. Like they're in a pretty good spot in the first, actually, to where like the guys are starting to be more reasonably priced. So like a Jordan Addison to them is a guy that really interests me, especially with Keenan and Mike Williams like being injury prone. That's pretty good landing spot for a wide receiver in the draft.
Yeah, I really like somebody like that. Somebody to the Chargers, any receiver to the Chargers in general, like as a dynasty pick would be amazing. Right, like this year, like I said, it's kind of hard. Like who knows if Josh Palmer is technically still just going to be, it all depends what you see in training camp with the rookies if they really, really show up. But if you got the first round capital, it seems like people that, even Dotson's a good example of last year. Somebody that nobody cared about, nobody was excited about, that ended up being pretty good on a pretty bad team. But, Chargers can throw the ball. I don't think Herbert's as bad as he was last year. That's hard to do.
And he was hurt last year too. So, yeah.
So do you feel better about Herbert going into this year than you did last year, or do you feel worse?
I feel better. I mean, I was at cost, I was fading Herbert last year. And now in Superflex, he's going as the QB6 between Burrow and Lamar and then Lawrence. And like assuming there's not a huge difference between the two, I still think I would rather have Herbert over Lawrence, but it's not a huge difference. I'm kind of surprised that in Superflex, Herbert is going ahead of Lawrence because that was not the case earlier this offseason.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it that way personally. It just seemed, we just talked about it with their wide receiver room. You got 4 guys and a running back that are very, very competent. And then here it seems like you really only got 2 guys that 3 if you count Eckler, 3 guys, if Eckler's even there, 3 guys that you're more or less hoping.
No.
Yeah, I would say overall, I think both of us will have a decent amount of the Chargers, like on a couple different teams, but I don't think it's going to be anything like drastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
That's my take on the Chargers. I really do think they're going to be about as middle of the road as they can possibly be this year.
Yeah. What's their over under 9.5?
Yeah. That's about right.
Yep. Well, now we get to talk about maybe one of my least favorite teams, the Russell Wilson-led Denver Broncos.
So I don't necessarily have a hot take on this, but I really do have, and I'm really hoping I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid that I was last year, because if that's the case, it's really, really old. I really do think they're going to be a lot better this year. I really, really do think that they're going to put it together this year. If they keep both receivers with Tim Patrick coming back, how do you not?
Yeah. I guess my problem is they're twisting my brain into a pretzel because the context here is last year I was very overweight on Denver. If the average, amount of any player you draft is supposed to be 8%, I had double that on Denver. Yeah. And that, obviously they were a complete flop. So now my head starts getting confused of well, I don't want to draft him again, but then I'm going to be out on them when I shouldn't be. And I don't know how to feel about them. Sean Payton gives me more confidence in the run game, but not necessarily Russ.
Yeah. Well, the problem with that is they got, Javonte probably won't be there to start the year. So that sucks a lot. We saw Pirine in Cincy when he had the chance, like I said, put up crazy, crazy numbers. So I think Pirine's kind of one of those guys that's going to at the beginning of the year, light the world on fire, but he'll spin off by the time it matters.
Yeah, that's what surprised me is, some people in the best ball space have been like very, very pro Samaje Perine. And like, I get it. I'm more worried about Javonte than the market is right now.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, I still think Javonte is going to be back at some point. So you're going to get 14 games out of Perine. He's going to have a high advance rate. And then you're going to show up with a bunch of other teams in the playoffs with Perine when he's not playing, and they're all just going to get wiped off the map.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what's going to happen. If I was to pick one player from Denver, though, like Jerry Jeudy this year, with how the things look towards the end of the year with Russ and him, there is something there. Russ would actually make throws to him. I don't know. It just looked, there was something there to me, just like the eyeball test that really checked out.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that pick. Man, I just wish could have any level of confidence in Russ.
And I know it's easy like to go out and say, oh yeah, let's pick the wide receiver one on every team. They're probably going to be the best. But I mean, there's definitely wide receiver one upside with Jerry Jeudy, like, on the higher end. Just a matter of if Russ cooks or not, essentially. And we haven't seen them with Tim Patrick either. So,
yeah, I think the hard part is like their defense. I mean, I know they made some moves to sell during last year, but like their defense was still pretty good overall. Yeah. So it's hard to see them being like extremely pass heavy. But I guess at tight end, I'm a little bit worried about Greg Dulcich because Tim Patrick's coming back, and also new coaching staff. Alberto is at least, an athletic guy. Like, it would not surprise me if he gets more involved.
Not making that mistake.
Hackett's gone. So I'm not saying I'm going to draft Alberto. I'm just saying it makes me worried for Greg D.
Yeah, I had way too much Alberto last year. Yeah. Way too much.
Yeah, I remember that now.
I'll say I was all in on him. Yeah, I guess we didn't even touch on that with Hackett being in New York this year. That'll be interesting,
Yeah, I guess it doesn't scare me because Rodgers is there and he's
gonna do what he wants anyway.
With Rodgers before.
Yeah. Rodgers is the OC there. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
But just to touch back on the running back room, I guess my approach is I still think, like, if I am going to draft Perine, I want to make it early in the summer because I think the news is only going to be worse and worse on Javonte as we go through the year, and then Perine is just going to keep going up and up, and I do not want to chase, the kind of guy who's not going to be playing late in the year.
I agree. And I think that was the second point I was going to make. I'm like, if I'm going to take one of these guys, that I'm going to go like a little bit more of our running back heavy kind of draft. I think Perine would be somebody that I'd be super interested in, especially to get you through the front part of the year. So these rookie running backs that aren't going to be Bijan, who's starting day one kind of thing, have the time to come into full form, like Ken Walker did last year.
Yeah. And I put like a rookie question mark on there, but I'll go back to that draft capital chart, and like the Dolphins, Broncos are in pretty rough shape after the Russ trade. The one caveat here is they do have 2 back-to-back picks in the 3rd round, so that could be a sweet spot for them to go running back, especially if Sean Payton has a guy that he falls in love with.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'll say. And I think Peyton coming to the team, since we've seen it with Kamara, that's what makes me hate that Javonte's hurt. Because when Javonte played, we had Javonte, once again, Javonte's Inferno just take over the world for those little bit of time. He got hurt. It just seems like every single time for him, he's another guy that gets hurt when he finally gets going. And with someone like Peyton and Kamara, since Javonte could be similar-esque play style to Kamara, he could be that guy that's putting up, CMC numbers on weeks. Like, I really thought going into last year that Javonte could, have average 15 plus a game consistently over and over and over again.
Yeah,
pushing 20.
He was like a late second round pick last year. So even if it was just an ACL, like I think I'd be okay with taking Javonte where he was going. I mean, I think he was like a 7th round pick. And he's just so talented that I'd be okay betting on that profile. So in Superflex, he's pick 109. So even if we say like pick 100.
Yeah. It's so
if
crazy.
If it was just
now.
Even if it was just the ACL, I'd feel really good about it. But knowing there's all the other, like, it's basically the J.K. Dobbins knee injury all over again. That has me really worried.
I don't know. I mean, it's a hard sell, not because like we know the upside is there and there could be so much, but ultimately probably what it's going to be. And even we've seen it with Peyton. He ran Kamara and Ingram quite a bit. So we could see same thing when Javonte comes back. And I think initially, I mean, at least at first, Pirine's probably going to be the guy that gets, the majority of the snaps off the bat till Javonte's fully, got the green light.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just out of curiosity, I looked at the guys going around him: James Conner, Joe Mixon, and then if you look at other positions, you've got Kadarius Toney, Burks, Brandon Cooks around there. So they're not great, but
James Conner right there.
it's still a pretty steep opportunity cost for a guy who might miss 3-4 months of the regular season. Like, I don't think it's going to happen, but if we said Javonte's going to be back by like week 4, even if he has to get worked in for a month, like, would that significantly change?
Probably not. I mean, in my mind, he's still, it's going to, I mean, related to the Miami back situation, I think you'll get to the point where you're getting drives at a time by both running backs, and it's just a matter of who's going to score this week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's what's going to help you win versus help you lose in a lot of ways. Is, do you make this pick? Does it pay off? Or, is it going to be a complete bust? Because Javonte very easily he might not even play the whole year. I mean, we don't know how truly shredded his knee is.
Right. And he's just a guy that scares me. Like I was saying earlier, like, I'm okay fading Derrick Henry. Javonte is the type of guy who, especially at this cost, like, he could easily come back in week 16 or 17 and set the world on fire. Yeah. And then I'm just like, well, shoot.
Yeah.
But it's just going to be, it just feels like it's going to be very, very hard to get him there.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they're just with giving the names you said, I think especially somebody like James Conner, who we know there's no other back in, Arizona's backfield. We know that they're not going to be very good off the bat, so they're going to probably try to rely on some of the more veteran players, and probably a quarterback that's not too confident dumping the ball super far downfield. So probably get a little bit more receiving work at in the front end. But if I remember right, I think Conner was like hyper efficient towards the end of the year, and he was really, really good too. But I don't know.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to do some mocks and
I know
get our true opinions formed a little more on this.
I know. Yeah, it's tough until I feel like I need like 5 to 10 drafts under my belt to really get a feel for a lot of these spots.
Yeah, is this guy gross or not?
Yeah. Last team for this one. Obviously a lot of movement on the Raiders, but not all of it fantasy relevant. I guess the highlights is Waller on the way out, and then Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Myers on the way in. I think Jimmy is a win for Davante Adams, even if it's still a slight downgrade overall.
Yeah,
because the alternative was probably a rookie, which I'll take Jimmy G over the rookie.
I think we're going to see more of the style of Green Bay Davante Adams than last year, Javonte Adams, you're not going to see those big plays. Jimmy G doesn't know how to throw the ball like Derek Carr does, at least that deep. He going to be kind of more on the San Francisco essentially style is what I'd imagine of routes, where we're getting a couple more screens and stuff like that in short routes, and then breaking off big plays just because he's better, bigger, faster kind of thing, able to get separation. Obviously Devontae's one of the best route runners in the league, if not the best. So
yeah,
a lot to be said about that. Jimmy G is kind of a net neutral, I think, for Adams as a whole, and I think he has a better floor, a little bit better floor, but a little bit worse of a ceiling.
Yeah, Adams is going as wide receiver 7, just behind AJ Brown, and then ahead of Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra. So
seems perfect.
Yep.
Man, these people know what they're doing.
Yeah. It's almost like putting money on it. The wisdom of the crowd shows up.
So where's your stance on Josh Jacobs? That's probably the biggest touching point here.
Yeah, I somehow managed to be successful in best ball last year, despite having 1% Josh Jacobs when he was an 8th round pick and finished as RB1. So that did not feel good, tuning in every week to watch him go for 30 points. I mean, I think it's probably going to be more of the same this year. It's hard to repeat the same level of upside, but he doesn't have a lot of competition for touches. And, I guess, I don't know, maybe a concern is with Garoppolo not being able to stretch the field like Carr. Maybe he's facing tougher boxes.
Sure.
That could be one downside argument, but I think he was priced appropriately. He's going as a late third, or not late, early third, kind of in the Breece Hall, Derrick Henry range, which I'm perfectly fine mixing him in there.
Yeah, every once in a while. I don't see him, like you said, repeating last year by any means. If anything, kind of I see the receiving work going up just since that's more Jimmy G's play style. We get the backs a little bit more involved. I don't see anything crazy, though. I don't see offensive player of the year kind of style coming again. It's just a matter of does Vegas score as much as they did last year, because they scored a lot more, I feel like, than they should have. Davante Adams kind of lost a running mate in Waller. I don't think Waller, kind of lit the world on fire in the sense of taking or giving Adams more separation or anything like that, but just having that distraction out there. Now we got nobody else on the team that's really out there to do so. Jacoby Myers doesn't really excite me, and I don't think Hunter Renfrow changes much from last year. So I think Jacobs could get I think it's going to be on the lower end, but I think last season by far will be his career season.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think you touched on some of the receivers. Jacoby Myers was actually a guy I was excited for going into free agency. I am not excited at all in this landing spot. To me, him and Hunter Renfrow, they're going to fill the same role in the offense, even with Darren Waller vacating a lot of targets. So, ADP wise, I think Jacoby Myers was going kind of right near Juju, which is ironic considering Juju took Jacoby Myers' spot on the Pats. But I'd rather have Jacoby than Juju, but I'm not excited.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you're comparing two teams, I do think that Jimmy G will have more passing yards than Patriots quarterback one combined.
And it could get kind of messy here. The Raiders could go with a rookie, and then we're staring down the potential of, I think Jimmy G would probably still be favored to start all 17 in that scenario, but like you got to really start thinking through if he's going to be there for the playoff weeks.
Right.
Not that Jimmy G is really a guy that we're targeting anyway, but
no. I mean, he seemed he was always be efficient in San Francisco, but it just seems like that's the San Francisco thing because of who their playmakers are, especially last year. You had Debo 2 years ago that was just give him the ball, and he somehow turned nothing into something always. Even Ayuk now coming in the form, barring Jimmy G didn't play with him much. But, you had people that were making plays. Kittle, probably the most aggressive runner in the league, potentially, between him and Henry, in my opinion. So, Davante Adams isn't necessarily like super beefy guy when it comes to that kind of thing. He's nothing to slack on, but in comparison to, somebody like George Kittle, he's going to get his yards. He's going to get down safely. He's not going to directly run through people like that.
Yeah.
But I like Davante Adams every single year. I think what we learned from last year most is when wide receivers that are elite go to different teams, they continue to be elite. And that's why I'm not worried about this quarterback change at all, because it's the same situation, just different. You got a new quarterback. He's still going to be elite. Nothing else about the team has really changed, just besides a few players. And he's still going to be the number one. I think he's just going to get more targets for shorter yards.
Yep. No, I agree with everything you said. I guess if you want to poke a hole in Adams, it's that he's 30 and he'll turn 31 like late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really the only hole there that you can find. So
yeah, if he showed any signs of slowing down, then I'd be concerned. But until we see otherwise, it's kind of one of those things. Like him and like Henry, I'm on the same train as. I know they're older, but they haven't given us any sign that they're falling apart yet. Do you think Austin Hooper is going to have any role similar to what Waller's was? Or do you think they're kind of lean more back on Jacoby and Hunter Renfrow to take more of the targets?
Yeah, I think probably the latter. I don't have much interest in Hooper. I guess part of that is because I've seen some buzz about them and the rookie tight ends. So, maybe by late summer, if it's still looking like Hooper's still the guy. But even if he is the guy, he's almost like a poor man's Dalton Schultz to me, and that he's just going to catch the ball and fall down.
Yeah, that's hard to argue. The only plus side in that is because making the link with Jimmy G to Kittle, having success with your tight end. I didn't know if you think that would kind of overlap in any way.
Yeah, I don't think so. Don't think I'm buying it.
Not yet.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where we've seen success with Austin Hooper in Atlanta. I don't even remember when that was, 2019 maybe. And then we saw him have a little bit in Tennessee here and there. Like he'd have splash games, but nothing. Maybe it's only like 2 splash games. I know I had one game where I want to say he threw a touchdown or something happened. It was some kind of trick play, and I know I was involved with them.
There you go. That's the stack we need to win it all.
Yeah.
Austin Hooper to Davante Adams.
Yeah. There was something weird. I just remember watching it in person and just couldn't believe it. It was with Chig. I think Hooper threw one to Chig or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe it was vice versa.
That does ring a bell now that you say that.
So, yeah, honestly, if I don't necessarily love the secondary receivers, like I said, I think I would stick with Renfrow just because he has history with the team. If I was to choose one outside of obviously Adams, it's hard for us to say right now. So we need to probably do some more, some real drafts here coming up. When we'll be doing more with when Best Ball Mania starts, with these later round receivers.
Yeah, we'll get a better feel for guys we like or don't like at cost. But I think we've said just about everything we possibly can with the
For
AFC. We'll blitz these win totals real quick here. We got the Chiefs at 11.5.
Over.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy over for me. Chargers 9.5.
I'm gonna go under.
I'll say over, but I think that's a good line.
Yeah, that one's really close. Broncos 8.5. I want over. I think they could push 10. I don't know. I have faith in them this year for whatever reason.
I'm going under. I'm not falling for the refs. Not riding with refs.
And Vegas at 7.5. I would say I just don't think the Chargers are going to do that well this year. Do that well this year. I want to say over. I feel like they can get to 8 or 9.
I'll go under, but I think they get 7.
I'm very much looking forward to going back and seeing that my over, like the math doesn't even come close to that.
Oh yeah, it's just over on everyone.
Like, yeah, they're definitely going to win more games than that. That doesn't seem like that much. They must be playing the South a lot.
Yeah.
But all right, we made it.
We did it. We planned to talk about all 32 teams in about an hour. We spent 2.5 on just the AFC. If anybody out there has somehow watched this entire show, yeah, a round of applause. Give us a follow on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and if you're new to Underdog, be sure to use the deposit match code there. EJ, any final thoughts here?
No, I'm looking forward to the NFC. That's more my wheelhouse of teams. NFC East, I probably know as much as anybody else I feel like the whole community pretty much could. So I'm ready to give my input there.
Yeah, and we've got a lot more dumpster fire at QB in the NFC. So it'll be fun to talk through. We'll see if we can keep it under 2 hours tomorrow, but it'll be a challenge. All right, man. Well, we'll be spending the summer trying to climb the leaderboards here. And on that cheesy intro or outro,